This is Kay Rudolph. This presentation is on how to get started researching finding your family. Now, learning to research your family tree is a lot like learning how to paint a real tree. If you just dive in and you don't have any idea what you're doing and you don't have any knowledge, your results are sometimes a little abstract and not really reflecting the reality. My goal is to provide you with basic skills to help you learn to develop a real life-based tree of your family history. With time, effort, and practice, you can become more adept at researching your family tree and produce a more detailed, more lifelike record of your family history. So the first truth in genealogy is that research requires patience and effort. Now, an artist has tools for drawing a tree. What are the tools that a genealogist has? Well, to draw out the tree, we use the contemporary records that were created by and about our ancestor. These include census records, vital records, military land, probate records, wealth of other government records, tombstones, church records, newspapers, oral histories, manuscripts, diaries, and letters. Where do we find these? We find them at websites like Family Search, Ancestry, and Fold3. These are the big three, but they're not the only source of records. We're also going to want to learn how to use federal, state, and county archives, use a variety of libraries, both online and physical libraries, same with universities and historical societies. So let's look at an example. My grandfather's name is William Rudolph. Let's find records for my grandfather. So I go here to the FamilySearch.org website. I type in my grandfather's name, William Rudolph, and click search, and I get 25,677 results for William Rudolphs. I have a bunch in the 1940 census, born in Colorado and Missouri, Kansas, Kentucky, Virginia, which are my grandfather. That brings us to step one. Before you start to research your family online, step away from the computer. Talk to people. Phone, write, email, relatives, near and far, people that you have not spoken to in decades, people who are remote or near cousins who have never had an interest in family search. Have information that's going to help you identify your ancestors' records from out of that pile of records of people who have the same name. One very helpful way to jog people's memories is to use photo albums and other memorabilia to pique their memories. Brainstorm. Jot down everything that you can think of about your ancestor, things that you know. Don't worry about getting things into some sort of organized order. At this stage, you really just want to focus on what recollections do you have. I remember my grandfather talking about an Aunt Minnie or a Mamie who lived with them. He lived in Brooklyn. He said something once about one of my ancestors was the first person to interview a pope. So just write down all of these recollections that you can get. Use composition books. I like these because they have a sewn-in binding, so you're not going to lose any slips of paper. You might want to use a tape recorder. You could use your smartphone, or you could record into your desktop computer. Go on a scavenger hunt around your house. Look for anything that is family related. Do you have a copy of a family Bible? Look at old letters. They're full of information about, don't forget to send Toby a birthday card. Her birthday is coming up this Wednesday. Photographs, we talked earlier about how useful they can be to spark people's memories about family. Are there any scrapbooks that contain little tidbits of family history? Family diaries, school yearbooks from your parents or grandparents, any loose newspaper clippings, any birth, marriage, death certificates. Scour those for every detail. Look for old pieces of fancy looking paper that might be old deeds or wills or other type of certificate. What you need to realize is that it's the details that separate your ancestor from the numerous people who had the same name. So my grandfather was William Rudolph, and there are thousands of William Rudolphs out there, but there's only one with a particular set of aunts and uncles and cousins and in-laws who was born in a particular place, lived in a particular place, who had a particular occupation, who experienced a unique set of events. So write all of this down. Anything that you recall about where family were born, where they lived, lakes that the family visited in the summers, places that they talked about, occupations, like my grandfather mentioning that one of my ancestors had interviewed a pope, events, disasters that your family lived through. Next, you're going to start organizing the data that you have, and I'm going to speak here specifically about using pedigree charts and family group sheets to organize the relationships that you've already identified. So let's say you want to use a paper-based system. So you'll have pedigree charts like this, which you can find online, that you can fill in, showing yourself as the beginning with your spouse and each of your parents and grandparents and so forth. And there's places you can actually type these in on your computer and then print them out for information about when and where these key events, birth, marriage, and death, occurred. I have these stored on my website. If you go to pastinsight.com, click on my useful links, and scroll down to the section on printable charts. So you'll notice here that we have the pedigree chart. This one is listing 4 generations of families. And we have the individuals in the chart numbered. This is actually a very useful thing to do because it lets you identify, for example, my father, William Rudolph, is going to be number 2. My grandfather, William Rudolph, is going to be number 4. So it helps you separate out people of the same name. This is the Onentafel system. You are number 1, your father is number 2, Your mother is number 3. Your paternal grandfather is number 4. Your paternal grandmother is number 5. Your maternal grandfather is number 6. Your maternal grandfather is number 7. And then it continues on. The easy way to remember this is the father is always twice the number of the child, and the mother is always 2 times the child plus 1. Dads are always even, mothers are always odd. So yourself to your father is 2, grandfather is 4, great-grandfather is 8. If your father is 2, your mother is 3. Her father is 6, her grandfather is 12. You can see how the system works. All right, so let's do a quick test. Here we have an unnumbered, unlisted family tree. I want to know what is the Anantafel number for this ancestor way out here. All right, well first, let me trace a path back to me, and then I'm going to use what I know. Fathers are 2 times the child. Mothers are 2 times the child plus 1. So I am 1. My father is therefore 2. His father is 4. His mother is 5. Her father is 10. Her mother is 11. Her father is 22. Her mother is 23. Her father is 46. His father is 92. So that individual would be identified as number 92 in my entire family tree. You can see all the other numbers just fit right in. So you go through, you fill out your family chart with the information that you have. Don't worry if you don't have very deep, you will in time. You'll notice this is 4 generations: myself, my parents, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents. But I've got more family than that. So that's why we have additional charts. This is chart 1 that pertains to me and my family. Additional charts are going to go on separate sheets of paper. So my great-grandfather's family will continue on chart 2. My great-grandmother's family on my father's side will continue on chart 3, and so forth. Let's take a look. For example, William Abbott Lockwood, who is my great-grandfather on my paternal grandmother's side, he is going to continue on chart number 4. So I will create a chart number 4, and William Abbott will be in the lead position on that. Number 1 on this chart is the same as number 10 on chart number 1. Here is number 10 on chart number 1. I might actually go through and renumber them on this sheet of paper. So William would be 10, his parent would be 20, his mother would be 21, his paternal grandfather would be 20 times 2 is 40, his paternal grandmother would be 41, and going through. Marcus's grandfather, or Marcus's father, would be 40 times 2 is 80, and that takes us through. And likewise, we can calculate what the continuing chart numbers for each of them would be. FamilySearch.org is my favorite website for genealogy. The reason is that there are great websites out there like Ancestry and MyHeritage and WikiTree, but Family Search is a little bit different in that it is the website put together by the LDS Church, of which I'm not a member, but I respect the fact that they have a great commitment to family history research, and they are going to make sure that the information that is collected about family history is preserved. So I strongly recommend going to their website, signing up for a free account. It's very easy to do. We'll talk at a later date about how you can be sure that your privacy will be maintained. Let me at least tell you now that any information that you enter about living people on this website is strictly private, and only people signing in with your password will be able to view that information. And so you can use this information to search for records. You can also use it to record the research that you have conducted. And so I have my family research online here because I want to make sure that it is going to outlast me and outlast any private corporation that depends on my subscriptions in order to stick around. Now, I am living, if you were to go into the Family Search website and look up that ID, you would receive a message that that person does not exist. Living people are not visible to anybody except the person who created them and is logged in on that password. You can print from the pedigree page on the Family Tree website, and that will produce a pedigree chart that will be filled in with the information that you've already entered into the tree. All these blue sections you can edit and type in on your computer. So you can add the information to identify on later charts what position that person is on a previous chart. So this is pedigree chart number 1. If I were to want to have the extension for William Abbott for chart number 4, I would go to the pedigree chart on the Family Search website. I would highlight William and select the tree. That will set William as the point person for the pedigree chart. And now when I click on print, it is going to print a chart for William. I can go up here and edit and say that this is chart number 4. Number 1 on this chart is the same as number 10 on chart number 1. And you see it fills in the others. You can also get to that point by clicking on William and selecting his person profile page, which opens up the page with all the details about him, about his vitals. We'll be going into that in more detail. But over here in the pedigree, in the print section, you can click on the link for pedigree, and that will again take you to this chart. A third way to find individuals that you're working on your tree is to click on this down arrow next to the person tab on any of the pages in the family tree, and that will open up a history of people's profiles that you visited, so you can quickly get to the profile of an individual that you've been working on recently. You can scroll through your recent history, and that takes us to William. Family group sheets. You'll want to have one for each nuclear family, and this will list all of the dates, the places where events occurred, the distinguishing characteristics that are going to be so important for separating your ancestor from another of the same name. On a paper-based system, you'll print out a family group sheet somewhat like this. I have this one on my pastinsight.com website. Using the familysearch.org website, again, we can go, for example, to William Lockwood. If you scroll down, you can see all the detailed information that is essentially an online family group sheet for William. You can also, on the print section of the profile page, print either a simple family group sheet or a family group sheet that includes a list of the sources that you have attached to that individual. So here we have William M. Lockwood's family group sheet with the information about family group number, and here are the sources that I have attached to William. Big warning. In genealogy, it is not like Dragnet. This is not a case of just the facts, ma'am. It is critically important to understand not just what you know, but how you know it. You need to record both your facts and your sources for those facts. Why bother recording sources? That's so tedious, right? Well, think about it this way. When you park your car, you have no problem understanding where that car is parked. But when you return to the lot after being away for a while, you're going to have a hard time finding your car unless you've given yourself a map. And that's what a citation is. Think of the researchers who are going to carry on your research. You are not going to get your entire family history done. You are going to make a start at it, but it is going to be others who are going to pick up your research and carry it forward. So you need to leave them information so they understand how reliable your findings are and don't feel obliged to repeat all your research. So what exactly do you need? You're going to need to have enough information to understand what the source is that you're looking at and where to find it again. For example, let's say you have a newspaper clipping. You're going to need to include the name of the newspaper, the city where it was published, the date of publication, the article title, the page and column. That's the basic information that you need to find a particular article in a newspaper. So there's nothing exotic about this. It's all very logical. Let's say you find a document on a website. You want to list the name of the website, the title of the page or database on the website, the name of the ancestor exactly as it was listed on this website, and the date you viewed the item. Why is that important? Because sometimes websites change. And so you want to be able to determine whether this document doesn't exist because the website has changed or because you misinterpreted the document in the first place. For an official certificate, list down what type of certificate it is, the name of the agency that issued the certificate, the Bureau of Health, for example, the date and the location that it was issued, and the certificate number. A tombstone. List the name and location of the cemetery. If it's one of these small, unnamed rural cemeteries, that don't have a published name, you're going to want to list directions to get to it. List the name that was on the tombstone, the date you viewed the tombstone or the date the tombstone was photographed, and the name of the photographer. Sadly, a tombstone may exist today, and in a few decades it may no longer be available. If you have a personal letter that is a source of information, include the writer's name and location. We need to identify who wrote that letter. Who did they write it to? The recipient's name and location. When was it written? The current or the last known address of the person who is holding the actual letter now. And a note about how the writer is connected to the facts, such as, for example, the writer was the grandmother of the recipient. We want to understand who is providing information so that when we're faced with conflicting facts, we can evaluate those conflicts. We can evaluate which is the most credible source of information. That's why it's so critical for us to have this detailed information that lets us know how we knew that information. Family traditions. Who passed the tradition on to you? Try to be as specific as possible. Who told you the family story? My grandfather told me that one of my ancestors had interviewed a living pope. This was when I was in my teens, when I was visiting him in Tucson, Arizona in the early 1970s. List their source, if you know it, and list the source's relationship to the subject. For example, the date of my great-grandmother Nora Hogan's arrival in the United States is something that's actually up for a bit of conflict. There's a bit of disagreement about that. One source was told by her aunt, Edna Hogan Lee, of a certain story about how my grandmother arrived. I found different information in a passenger arrival list. So in order to evaluate which of these is the correct date of her arrival, I need to be able to evaluate those two sources of conflicting information. We're going to be talking about this example of my great-grandmother's arrival date in a later video. It's a good example of the sort of evaluation that you need to do in order to determine which of two contradictory facts is correct. Did she arrive with her husband in 1880, or did she arrive in a separate boat several years after her husband emigrated to the United States? Linking to internet pages. There is a great little tool that I really absolutely recommend that you seek out. It is called Record Seek. You can find it by just Googling the terms Record Seek Tree Connect. It's going to end up being one of the very first links in the search results. Click on that. And this is something that you'll only have to do once. You're going to drag that Record Seek button up to your bookmark bar and let it go. You'll see that it creates a little line where when it feels that this is the spot. When you see that line, let go, and it will drop in a little bookmark called Record Seek. Let me show you why this is so valuable. So let's say you find article or some piece of information about one of your ancestors and you want to attach it to the Family Search family tree so that you can see it again and so that you can show people how to get a hold of it. So here I had found an article. It was a short biography of my grandfather that was printed in volume 9 of the American Chess Bulletin when my grandfather was actually a young man, and I want to attach that to his family tree. Here I am on the page. I want to have a link to this page attached to his family tree. All I need to do is click on that link that I've created on RecordSeek. It will ask me, do you want to create a source for Family Search or Ancestry.com? I want to create it for Family Search. It creates the citation. I recommend that you go in and edit these. So give it a source title so that when you look at the list of sources on a person's profile, you can recognize what each one is. This is William E. Rudolph Bio, an American Chess Bulletin, Volume 9, 1912. Do not change the URL. This is going to be the link to that web page. Describe the record. You can edit the citation, or you can provide simpler citation information. I have to admit, I am not really good at writing citations. They stress me out. So I will describe that information here about what it is and who created it that is not really following the standard format using the correct phrasing and so forth, but it provides the information for future users. Click Next, enter the unique identification number on Family Search for my grandfather, LZF4-6F2. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste it in the Search by Person ID box, and click Next. Make sure there's no spaces. Sometimes if there's a space, it will just sit there, not giving you feedback, just you keep clicking Next and nothing happens. So if that occurs, check to make sure you don't have any errant spaces in there. And provide an explanation. This is one of my grandparents, and I know it applies, or whatever is the appropriate explanation you have for how you know this record is for them. And you can, if you want, attach it to an additional person, or you can go and view it on Family Search, or you can just exit and close it out. So on Family Search, when you click on Sources and pop down, you will see William E. Rudolph Bio, an American Chess Bulletin, Volume 9, 1912. That's what this icon of the world signifies, that you have a link to a source that is not on the Family Search website itself. If you open that link up and click on the URL, it will take you straight to the page that we were just at. So what we've covered so far: Step 1, find out everything you can from family and friends. Write down all the information in your trusty composition book. Organize the information with Family Search or using printed pedigree charts and family group sheets. And start citing right now how you know the facts that you've collected, where they came from. Next, we're going to be discussing census records. I hope this has been helpful to get you started. See you next time.